Hope everybody's having a beautiful Sunday today. It's a very beautiful day outside. Sun is shining. I got to walk my wonderful dogs, and we had a great time. And now I'm feeling, to be honest, a little bit nervous because jumping into my first ever live stream. But today, you're not here to just talk about the weather. We're here to talk about the Digitone 2. And this is my favorite scent, and I want to talk about why that is. Excuse me. This is not a sampler. A sampler, you rock a sampler, man, you can grab sounds from anywhere. You could have a Russian choir. You could have a snare drum from an old 70s record. You could grab a Dr. Dre sample, which is just another sample of another sample. You know what I'm talking about? We can grab anything. And sound sources from real life are obviously extremely complex. With the Digitone 2, we're not playing with the same, infinite amount of complexity that exists in a real room with real acoustics and real life strangeness. When you're recording in real life, all this interesting stuff will leak into the music and the resonances. It's very beautiful. With Digitone 2, we're dealing with a very perfect digital world, and that's very different. But what I love about Digitone 2 is that we can always get at least halfway there. So if someone showed me a sample of a Russian choir playing a certain chord, well, if I find that chord in a Digitone 2, I can make something that accomplishes the same feel. It won't sound like the Russian choir, but in the context of a song, it could serve the same purpose. We have reverb, we have the ability to create movement with the way that the timbre of the sound changes, the way that a sound throws itself across a room. We can kind of get there, but the Digitone 2 is always speaking to you. You have to listen. You have to say, okay, I know what I want, and this is what it's telling me it can give me. So what is the spot in between there? What can I do that will accomplish what I'm trying to accomplish creatively without compromising, what I'm trying to get? And so it's a conversation. It's a back and forth. And for me personally, that brings out a lot of really exciting creative possibilities. And it's a blast. Let me see what's going on in the chat here. The video is lagging slightly behind. Well, that's lame. I wish I could fix that, but we're already going into this, so let's just keep going. So today what I want to talk about is why the Digitone 2 can be such an exciting way to begin on your creative process. Now, when you hear the initialized sound of the Digitone 2, it's just a sine wave. The sine wave is a perfect wave. Literally can't get any better than that. I see what y'all are talking about with this video lag. Man, that's lame. I'm so sorry about that, guys. Of course, I had this all worked out, stayed up late last night trying to make it fit, and now it's giving me a hard time, so sorry about that. Let me see if I can play around with it. Let's just keep going. So when we're talking about the initialized patch, we're talking about a sine wave. A sine wave is extremely simple, straightforward. It's perfection, but it's also the definition of boring. It is incredibly boring, and it's beautiful and it's purposeful and it's very helpful, but it's not it's never anywhere close to what we want to use it for. If we want to wrangle up a snare drum, if we want to wrangle up a kick drum, a lead, a bass, we're going to need to add a lot more color, a lot more texture, and sine wave is just so far away from that. So what I find okay, I really appreciate y'all helping me out with the technical stuff right now. But what I found is that the initialized sine wave patch being so perfect, it creates this little gap between what we can accomplish or what we can create and where we start. And it's not that big of a gap. It's not something that we can't like cross fairly easily. All we got to do is jump to the second page of the, sin, and we've immediately got interesting overtones. From here to there is not that big a deal. My point is, all these tiny events where you're having to overcome and cross this gap, it adds up. It's an emotional toll. It pulls from what you really need to be doing, which is creative work, exploration. So I really have been lately able to embrace taking a very chaotic approach to how I start ideas. So I was hoping today to start off kind of demonstrating that. And by the way, I just want to shout out everybody in the chat right now. Meerkat, Stephen Chong, Quace, Meerkat again, Trory Wizard. I love you guys. Thanks for being here. I feel you. Yeah. Villignon, those clean metallic sounds that you're talking about is very easy to get there. And the approach I want to do today is about kind of embracing the chaotic and weirdness of a FM metallic freakout, but only as a starting point, and then kind of building around it. So let's just get going. Now, of course, if you don't know, to get a randomized page, all you got to do is hold down the button and then hit yes. And it's just going to fill up with all this information right here. Now, an operator and a carrier could be out of 16. That's the number of options, 16, with some fractions in between the lower numbers. Because everything that's way up high, 14, 13, oftentimes that's what's like triggering my tinnitus with these intense metallic, fetishizations. Oh my God, sorry. That was my example and it delivered perfectly. If we're gonna start out with some randomized syn page here, and it's most likely gonna pick these high values, we're gonna do ourselves a favor. We're gonna go to function setup. We're gonna drop down here to octave, and we're gonna lower that by like 4 octaves because we do not need to be making this hard on ourselves. So let me see. What does this sound like? Okay, that's a much more reasonable musical sound. Let's keep going. Let's play around. Let's randomize this page. Of course, so this is our amount of modulation and our envelopes. And when we're playing with this, oftentimes it'll pick an attack time that's just way out there. Our sound isn't going to get there for like 20 seconds if the attack is way up there. But of course, it's just picking a value 1 out of 127. In real life, we would put like a smaller depth amount if we were applying an LFO to it. So it would, the range would be like from, 0 to like 23. Even 23 is a pretty long attack time. But of course, it's all conditional. So anytime you go to this page and you randomize, always recommend closing up your attack time, put it at 0 just to make it easy on yourself. Now, how does this sound? Okay, that's an interesting sound right there. I can kind of vibe with that personally. Let's see. Let's keep going. Let's play around with our attack time a little bit. Let's go back to this page. Let's audition a couple of different algorithms. Okay, to me that sounds really interesting. Okay. Now, let's go ahead and embrace the true chaos. Let's go over here to our LFO page. Let's randomize some LFOs. This is how you're going to get the most twisted sounds. So we're going to do LFO, hit yes. All right, we're messing with ratio B, upside down, exponential wave shape. This is going to be nuts. Oh, it's insanely fast. I don't even need to touch it. Let's go again. Another LFO. like a very drony sound right there. Okay, if that's our starting point, how do we want to go about putting this in? I will definitely try and rap at the end of this, just like in Hamilton. I will rap about the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Let's make that kind of the opening glove thrown on the ground of like an industrial loop, right? That sounds like that could be cool. By the way, I want to shout out my boy Skygazer in the house. Josh, I love you, bro. Thank you for being here. All right, we got our trig laid down right here. Let's slow down our tempo a bit. Interesting. Put some sample rate on it. Rock out some distortion. Just a little bit. Okay, so we have something to start with. Now let's add a kick drum to it. Let's give it a little bit of body, a little bit of a pulse. Now let's make it easy on ourselves. Let's go to FM drum and just kind of dial in sweep time, go up here to a depth, and I always just jump straight to the third page and turn the body decay all the way down, because otherwise it's just going to behave like a normal synth, and I don't necessarily want that. I want my kick to just be like in and out. That sounds cool, but obviously it's a little high, so let's turn our pitch down. Let's give it a little bit of color. Now, this wave folder, always just a little bit, will give the kick so much presence. Alrighty, that just completely transformed it. Now, I do think we could have a longer hold time. So one thing about when we think about loudness for sounds, it's not so much the actual decibels, it's how long you sustain those decibels. So if it's a really quick transient that jumps like 5 decibels, like our brains are the psychology of our ears, we're just going to kind of even that out. We're going to feel it and probably, trigger my tinnitus, but you're not necessarily going to hear that as something that is as loud as something that sustains that decibel level. So for drums specifically, you want to kind of have a little bit of hold time. That is the secret to having a really impactful, loud, heavy thudding drum. So we're going to increase the hold time. Let me give you a sense of what I mean. All right, it's simple. And of course, we're going to put some overdrive on it. Kind of helps build it out. Okay, now what would that sound like over our little track here? Oops. Techno. Let's go a little faster with our tempo, huh? Save. Always gotta save it. Now I want to do something that is always really useful, which is adding in ghost trigs to kind of silence and remove a sound. When you have a sound like this on track 1 where it's just holding for a long time, you can like puncture into the sound itself, drop in a moment of silence, and if you do it in accordance with another sound like the kick, it always has a really powerful effect. So let me show you how to do that. Do function, drop a ghost trig, take this ghost trig, we're going to grab our amp page, put the volume at 0, then we're going to paste a trig after it, just one trig later, and we're going to find that same value. We're going to untrig it and then retrig it. So now it's back at the initial volume. And you know what I'm going to do? Let's go ahead and consolidate this to 16 steps. So it'll be easier for me to demonstrate. So now when the kick arrives on track 2, it's going to drop out just for this trig and then come right back. It can also sound a little bit awkward. It's definitely something you can play with. And of course, if you use the LFO to rise and drop the volume, it can be really interesting because it can be a little bit smoother, potentially. I got an idea. Let's go ahead and turn this into 16 steps. Okay, getting funky. All right, let's see what the chat says. Hell yeah. All right, saving it. Now, I want to take these kick drums over here. I'm going to go ahead and raise the notes up. And so compared with the original, this one is now just enough higher to where it has a nice amount of body and impact, but it is going to contrast. So it'll be kind of like a back and forth, a little bit of a tick and talk. Let's see how that sounds. That can kind of serve as our snare. Let's jump to track 3. Let's go wild this time. Let's throw out some madness onto the FM page. We're going to do random here, and really we're going to random here because this is where the madness is on the offset page. What does that sound like? Sounds like nothing. Ooh, no, not what we want. We need some feedback and we need some modulation. And you know what? We need a different algorithm. There we go. That's it right there. Let's go to our LFO. I want to do something. This is going to kind of become our snare, but it's also sort of a hi-hat. It's also sort of like beating a tin metal can with a giant hammer in a warehouse. We want to drop the pitch a little bit. So it kind of is like when you hit a tom is like, doof. A real quick drop is on that tom. Of course, it all depends on the tom. We're going to put it to an exponential wave with a very sharp high point, then it drops down. We're going to set it to one-shot mode in halvesies, and we're going to raise this speed. By the way, if you're ever making drums, what you want to do is have your, instead of BPM, keep scrolling to where it goes past BPM and it says mult instead. What this is going to do is it makes it so that your speed is locked in place and it's locked to 120 BPM. The reason you want to do this is because if we say like make a really cool snare and we get our speed exactly right, but then later on we change our tempo, that's going to make a situation where the snare is not going to be the same snare. It might be slightly different and we can't have that, or at least I can't have that because I'm a perfectionist and a weirdo and a freak. So let's speed up. Let's put it at 64 and mult. Now we're going to be able to lock in the exact sound of this snare regardless of what tempo we're at. Oh, we got to put some depth in though. We go a little slower. Let's go ahead and drop our note as well, because I think it's a little higher than it needs to be. Thank you. Yeah, Dr. Levi Leviathan. Hell yeah, absolute versus relative. It's the perfect way to say it. I could have just skipped everything I said and just said that instead. All right, let's put some sample rate reduction on it. We also have way too much tail on this, I think. I also like to put it in attack, hold, decay mode, which is different. So this is attack, decay, sustained release mode, and this is always going to be dependent on how long we're holding the note for. Let's flip it to attack, hold, decay. If hold is at the highest amount and you see this little note inside of it, then it's going to reflect how long you hold down the note for. But this is a drum, we don't want that. Anything lower than the maximum amount is going to then just be a fixed amount of time, regardless of how long you're holding the trigger. I prefer this, even though it's less of a complex shape than the attack, decay, sustain, release mode, just because this is more consistent. I can more accurately kind of gauge the presence of the sound. All right, that's enough talking. Let's see how it sounds over this. Oops. I like that right there. Vampiric. Thank you, Julio. Shout out to my boy Julio. He was on the phone with me the other day, and I dove into the pavement to save my dog, and he was just on the phone with me wearing some AirPods, and I literally jumped into the pavement to save my dog, didn't catch my dog, did it again. Meanwhile, my neighbor thought I was an insane person. The point of this story is make sure your dog doesn't run away from you while you're on the phone with your friend. Julio, I love you, bro. Thank you for being here. Let's put a little more sample rate on it. You know, I think we could use a little filter on this because this is really sharp. So let's bring down some low pass. But let's increase that depth. I think that's a good place to start. Now, the reason I wanted to show you all this idea is because we started with this big gargantuan, very complex and, you know, intense sound on track 1, which I like. I like this sound a lot. But what does it sound like if we take that away? What about the stuff we built around it? Bring down that snare a bit. Okay. I think I know what we need. We need some hi-hats. But these hi-hats are going to be competing with some very high frequency sounds. So we can't go for a traditional hi-hat. We're gonna need something that has maybe a little bit more of a wood blocky sound, if that's possible. All right, so let's go into track 4. I'm gonna go ahead and silence the first 3 tracks. Track 4, let's turn up our modulation. And And we're going to dial in some envelopes for this sound. That's actually very musical. I like that a lot. That's not what we need. We need something kind of blocky. Switch over to attack, hold, decay. It's almost like smacking like a rubber band or something. Let's dial in some feedback. And you know what? Let's throw caution to the wind, save it, and then let's randomize this page. So right off the bat, I think our harmonics are doing some interesting things to the initial impact of this sound. Changing it to a sort of quasi-square wave here is kind of making it a little bit more in our favor. Let's go ahead and increase the hold time. Now, if we go too far, it sounds too musical. We need it to sound anti-musical, if that makes sense. Really, we just need, some complex overtones, because with percussion sounds, you're going to get a bunch of very complex overtones. With actual harmonic sounds, you're going to see these interesting fractions in your harmonics. For percussion, it's got to be basically noise. I mean, of course, there's always going to be, a fundamental and some interesting harmonics there. Maybe someone who's a little more engineer-minded can chime in, but I think what this recipe calls for is a little bit of danger. So if we go to this last page, let's get freaky. Let's go ahead and just mess with all these offsets over here. Let's do it again. And let's go ahead and let's change our algorithm to algorithm 6. This one is the most complex because we have operators and carriers modulating each other, so we can get some really interesting tangled relationships between these different frequencies. Let's randomize this page too. That's kind of interesting right there. I don't know. That sounds kind of nice. That's like not what I expected to be making, but I don't know. I feel like this is one of the big advantages of the Digitone 2 is that you will stumble on a sound and it won't be what you were trying to get, but then you get there and you think, no, well, maybe that's the direction I can veer towards. I don't know. Let's try this out. Oops. Let's raise our note up. Put some reverb on it. Let's edit our reverb. It's a little dark. That means a lot to me, man. Thank you a bunch, man. I just love this instrument so much. I want to share it with everybody. And I just can't stop finding things in it to want to talk about. So I really appreciate you saying that. That means a lot to me. Thank you. Thank you, Quace404, my boy. Creo7858 says, is anyone else struggling with the sound quality of the stream? How does it sound out for you guys? I mean, I know there's an issue with the sync. How's the sound for you guys right now? Cool. Okay. Troy Wizard asks, is D2 your favorite Electron box? It definitely is. I have a Syntax, I have an Analog 4, I have a Model Cycles, I have a Digitact 1, I have a Mono Machine, and a Machine Drum. I think that's, oh, and I bought an Octatrack, but I haven't used it yet because I'm so busy all the time. And I have to say, okay, thanks y'all. Thank you for confirming that it sounds good. I have to say, the Digitone 2 is my favorite because it's like sitting down and you don't know where you're going to end up. And I love that. And I think I could also have, really interesting and exciting adventures with the Analog 4, especially the Octatrack. I'm really excited to, get to know that one. But Digitone 2 is kind of my boy. I was all about Digitone 1. And as I was explaining earlier in the stream, what makes Digitone 2 special is that you are having a conversation with it. It is never going to give you, what you exactly desire or what you have in your mind. It can, but it's never guaranteed. And that creates a back and forth. It creates a feedback loop. So for me personally, creatively, that is why the Digitone 2 kind of is the king of all the boxes for me. But I think what I just said honestly applies to all the Electron boxes as they are. I mean, especially if something like the Machine Drum or the Mono Machine, which are, way out there, complex machines. And of course the Octatrack. But again, I don't know enough about Octatrack to, confidently talk about that. Let's see what everybody's saying. Okay. Thank you, bro. Appreciate that. Hell yeah. Shout out to Germany. What's the best way to make some dubstep rhythm style wubs on Digitone 2? Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, you definitely want to play with your envelopes, and I've been getting some interesting beats that are in 140 BPM. They're not exactly like dubstep. Trying to get that wop, 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 wop is like within reach. But I need to sit down and think about it a little bit. So let me get back to you on that. I'm tempted to just go for it and try, but I don't want to end up, landing flat on my face and making the lamest dubstep of all time or something. But let's see, what else are folks saying? Oh man, yeah, I would love to get a Tonverk. Man, I forgot about the Tonverk. Oh man, I would love to get one. Random bass sound plus LFO modulating a low pass filter frequency. Okay, Dr. Leviathan, let's do that. Let's try that real quick. I'm gonna mute these tracks. We're gonna jump to track 9. Random bass sound. Let's see, turn up some feedback, dial in some A modulation, drop our note. I think we could go deeper. Ooh. Ooh. Something to mimic waveform evolving to. Okay. Let me take both those ideas. Take the That's a good idea, Julio. We'll do that in a second, I think. All right, that's a pretty fat bass tone. All right, we're gonna go LFO. We're going to pick filter frequency, and we're going to do random, and let's pick, yeah, okay. What would that sound like? Let's just dial it up. We need to maybe draw it back, add some resonance, and a little bit of decay. No, actually, let's try this. Good idea. All right. Let's P-lock our LFO speed on this bass sound. Let's see what that sounds like. Did I say P-lock? I mean modulate. All right. Not a random LFO. Gotcha. My bad. Yeah, I like this. I don't know if this isn't dubstep. I'm not successfully finding that sound, but I do like it though. Ooh. Ooh. Okay, we gotta mess with our harmonics. Let's do that boy right there. Do a slow. Wait, let me keep it on the beat. Okay, I like that. I think we need more resonance. Okay, this has been an interesting experiment. Obviously, that's not a wub 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 for the dubstep, so I appreciate you suggesting that though, because I think that would make for a great video in the future. Because I've always really appreciated how psychedelic, if you zoom out, dubstep is super psychedelic. I mean, so is most electronic music, but I think people think of it as like club music, but to me, it's like, it's abstract, gets in your mind, massages your mind like you're on a trip, and I love that stuff. So I'm gonna save that for a video in the future. LFO ought to be free or trigger. Oh yeah. Yeah, good idea. Thank you, Dr. Leviathan. Man, Dr. Leviathan, you're coming through with a lot of great suggestions today. Although this should be locked to the tempo. Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah. Excellent. Glad to hear that, Meerkat. Thank you. Now, Trory Wizard said, can you make Aphex Twin like glitchy drums? I think that's a great opportunity to take this and add stuff to it. So let's go ahead and lay down a trig, and we're going to make that 16. No, let's make it 4 steps long and then copy it, because then maybe we can come back later and play with our LFO times a little bit. We'll see what happens. All right, and now let's add some glitched out drums. Track 10. Let's go to our FM drum machine and let's just throw out some random values. Ridiculous. Cool. Thank you, man. As always, we got to turn down our decay on the body. Now, Troy Wizard, when you say glitchy Aphex Twin drums, like which era of Aphex Twin are we talking about? Are we talking about 2001 breakbeat era, 90s era? Are we talking about closer to today with like, I guess it's not close anymore, but Cyro and the Tuss? Let me know what you mean, because I'm interpreting off, but I might be not, thinking of the same thing you're thinking of. Oh. All right. Oops. All right, and let's see what would happen if we bring in our other tracks over this. It does not fit at all. That does not fit at all. You know what the problem is we have too much 3 against the 4 happening on these LFOs. Yeah. Wait, no. There we go. Ugh, it's too loud, Sorry about that, y'all. Let's see what everybody's saying. Oh, I know, right? 2014 is like a million years ago, but it doesn't feel like it, and it feels like I was just, yeah. Hell yeah, drug use, classic. Okay. I had an idea that's what you meant, Troy Wizard, so I'm glad we're on the same page. Let's go ahead and shorten this release. And let's put, I always find myself wanting to put a little bit of pitch drop on a percussion sound, even if it's just slight, because it just kind of gives it a little bit of, how do you say this? A little bit of just like, obviously movement, but it just feels a little more natural to real life. You know, pitch isn't necessarily, you know, if you smack a wall with a stick, the wall probably not gonna, if it's a metal wall, well, okay. That's a bad example, but if you smack certain things with a stick, they're not necessarily gonna resonate. But there will be kind of this, as the sound goes through the object, it will kind of drop down the pitch a bit. So even a really slight amount of pitch drop, I think helps. Okay, that could be a hi-hat, it could be a percussion, it could be anything. Wow, thank you, Empty Frame, my dude. Wow, I feel honored, man. Thank you for being here. That's incredibly gracious of you. Let's see. All right, let's play around with our release of this sound. And let's put a random hold on it. We're gonna do sample and hold. Just dial in a little bit. Okay, I'm gonna be honest. I don't know if that's meshing anymore. Let's see what the folks are saying. Okay, Dr. Leviathan is coming in with some hot wisdom. I'm gonna have to screenshot this. My brain can't handle too many words right now. I'm under pressure. No. And Razor Defined has a great idea. Would love how to learn how to make a dub chord on the Digitone too. So dub chord and dubstep bass. I think both those things are going to be subjects of a video in the near future, because I know them well enough that I can certainly make them, but would it be good enough for me to share if I improvise it in front of you right now? I'm not sure. And I want to make sure to get something like that right. But so thank you for that suggestion. And also shout out to my man, Empty Frame. Thank you, brother. That means a lot to me. And that's my very first super on a live stream. So thank you. Thank you very much. Man, everybody pay attention to what Dr. Leviathan is saying. He's dropping some hot wisdom right now. Okay. Now this needs... Okay, hold on. Let's take a little vote. Do you want me to go back to this song that I was kind of developing in the beginning? Or do y'all want me to kind of start following in this direction with these sounds over here? Man, I think I lost the plot a little bit with that sound. I agree, Julio, I agree. Okay. I think the move now is let's continue down our path of trying to make glitched out Aphex Twin drums, and then let's see where that takes us. So this is obviously a start right here. I'm gonna be honest, I don't love it. Okay, that sounds closer. Cool, thank you, Quace. Because this can definitely go with the first song. So let's go ahead and try to make some more sounds, and then we're gonna organize them across it to kind of help accentuate and fill it out. Okay, thank you, Julio. I appreciate y'all. All right, so let's play around with our ratios a bit. I'm gonna try to make this like a hi-hat type sound, and of course we can do my favorite move in the world, which is go to algorithm 6, the most complex one, and just play around with some offsets. Now, I've shouted him out before, but I want to shout him out again. But Ivar Tritty is a really amazing Digitone 1 YouTuber who has made so many cool songs, and still does. He's been doing it for years. He's a big inspiration for me, but he demonstrated how to do this kind of hi-hat method, and I've always like just been internalizing it and kind of regurgitating it since then. But basically, you go to algorithm 6, which is our most complex one, where all the operators and carriers are kind of modulating each other. Then we jump back to the offset page. And if we play around with the offset of each of these, we want to throw them around, and we kind of want to get them in a similar ballpark, but none of them should be the same number, right? They should be kind of off, and you got to pick 3 out of the 4 to be similar. Then for the 4th one, you just throw it somewhere completely different. Oops. Gotta have some modulation on here. Sorry about that, y'all. Because as I turn this B2 operator around, we're getting some very drastically different tonal shapes, which is allowing us to kind of go into some interesting hi-hat territory. Man, I just hear potential everywhere we go here, but let's try to stay focused because we could go in any direction right now. Ooh. All right, I know what I want to do. I want to modulate the B2 operator. So we go to B2 offset over here on our LFO. Oops, didn't go. B2 offset, and we're going to do a half mode, and we got a good shape right there. What the hell? Oh. All right. I think I want to go backwards with this depth though. And I want to bring in some of this release a bit. Now when we go to play around with our B2 offset, it's not just going to be statically sitting in one spot, it's going to be dropping and then rising. So now we can find a more optimal position for this B2 offset so that we get the most interesting tone. There we go. And let's see. Let's just try to improvise over that. Oops, wrong one. Sounds crazy. I don't think I like track 4. That sounds like a thing. I think it could be cleaned up a little bit, but we're pretty close. Let's turn up track 1. Let's put it through some chorus. Put some reverb on it. And let's bring down track 11. It's a little sharp. Sorry. I think this kick needs to be louder. And you know what? I'm going to make these the same note. So it's not going to be a snare anymore. It's just going to be a rock hard kick. Let's try to make this kick more interesting. I think it's a little boring. It's alright, it's okay. Okay, I like that. That leaves some space. I feel like so often if I ever find myself just not feeling something, it usually means it's too crowded, and instead of worrying about what to add, I need to just remove things. And that always will kind of end up focusing whatever the idea is and then create new possibilities. Da-da-da-da. That's a good idea. Okay, I think there's enough industrial wickedness. We need to bring in what can elevate it and transcend it into something beautiful and twisted. We need some type of pad, some type of angelic choir in the midst of a giant factory. All right, track 6. So let's make some kind of smooth sounding pad. We're just gonna be really subtle with our modulators. So like there's a little bit of color there. Ooh, that would sound great with a little bit of LFO on the feedback, kind of just oscillating. But it needs to be a little faster maybe. It's very subtle. And of course, we need to put a little bit of drift into that pitch, because if we're gonna do something like this, a lead sort of, it needs to, oops, that's a little too far. Now, generally, when you're trying to add some drift to a lead part, you want to keep your depth relatively low. And the slower you go, the lower your depth needs to be. The faster you are, the more that you can kind of warp that pitch, because it'll even out in our ears. Like if it's a really fast vibrato or tremolo effect. But this sound needs a little more personality. Oops. All right. I like that. What do y'all think of that sound? Yes, I didn't realize that is very Boards of Canada. Whew. I like it. Thank you, Stephen Chong. Thank you, Quace. And thank you, Dr. Leviathan, for the good recommendation for ducking the bass. I think we should maybe I will try that again at some point. Fanfarish, okay. Something like that. Let's try it. Gotta find some notes that fit. Let's start with that. All right. My pleasure. Stay away from that shrill chord. I liked it because it was able to cut through above the rest of the sounds, but the tone was maybe not quite the vibe. start over with this chord. Oh man, nope. Let's keep it simple. Let's keep it simple. That ain't it. It's just not hitting. It doesn't feel right. I think a different approach is required. There we go. Forget that with a lead like this, a little goes a long way. When it comes to proportionality within the entire mix, when you have this high up lead, it's always tempting to make it the loudest thing, the thing that comes forward the most. But it's actually, it usually can benefit from being drawn back, just like hi-hats. I always think of hi-hats as like, yeah, I want them to be front center. I want people to feel these hi-hats, but hi-hats are there to blend. And a sound like this is not just providing harmonic kind of, direction, but it's also because it's so verbed out, kind of blending things. It's on a longer, slower path while these other sounds are moving underneath it. And it's very well suited to just being like right there in the mix. It does not need to overwhelm the way that, track one, this is a sound that like you want to overwhelm, To track one, this is our original sound. Let's start playing around with that, see if we can get some interesting results. Now bringing down that feedback immediately cleans it up because it was given so much of that nasty blowout white noise, which of course I love. Let's compare it. Put it like right on the edge there. Excuse me. Let's play with our harmonics. Now that's like a really clean sound right there. Let's play with our attack time over here. Okay, so this is like the cleaner version of that sound. Does that feel better or worse? Let's audition it with the other sounds. think? Let's randomize an LFO. Time by name, time music. Now, Dr. Leviathan has a pretty good idea. We could copy this sound and separate the harsh upper register frequencies from the clean bass frequencies. That's not a bad idea. It could create some really interesting results. Of course, we could like put movement on the track that has the higher frequency content. That right there. Okay. Let's do that. Alright, we're gonna copy this track. We're gonna run it over to track 7. Copy over to track 7. We're gonna grab this trig. Actually, we're gonna grab all these trigs. And we're going to copy that to track 7. And now we're going to silence the original track. This is our track 7. That is our copy. We're going to make this the clean one. So we're going to do a sine wave. We're going to detune it. We're going to have some... Why do I like that? I think you're right, Dr. Leviathan. I mean, that's kind of how I tend to do things, is to err on the side of caution as far as like intense, outrageous harmonics, especially with the Digitone 2, because it can just go so crazy. I tend to err on the side of like less is more, leave room, because I'm always going to have that drive and that instinct to push it. Some interesting sounds are happening right here, though. This is different. Okay. I like that. That's kind of cool. It's different. Save. Honestly, kind of insane. It's these insane LFOs, these randomized LFOs. Anytime you have an LFO and it's messing with a full-on ratio you are going to get the most twisted results. Let's take the depth off of that. See what that does for us. Because we're all the way over here on the mix side. Track 7 came from track 1. We warped it, we played around with it, we messed it up, took it so far away that now they're playing over each other, and to me it does not sound bad. Let's bring down some harmonics on it. And let's bring out some of the low end on track 7. That low end is pretty helpful, I think. So maybe just bring out some of the high end on track 1. Okay. Stereo spread, kind of move around some of these percussive sounds. A little bit easier to digest now. Okay, I think that's not a bad place to pause. I'm going to have to wrap it up in a little while. So I was thinking if anyone has any direct questions, I'd love to hear them, or any ideas of like the kind of stuff that you would specifically like to hear from the Digitone 2 or about the Digitone 2, because that's always super helpful for me to figure out like videos to make in the future. And like the one I have cooking right now is going to be, I think, really interesting. It's going to be based on the ARP, kind of playing around with the offset and a little bit mixed with the key tracking. And that's coming along great, but I need more. I need more ideas. And if anyone has just like something that they would love to hear, drop it down below. I need your help is what I'm trying to say. And I really want to make sure to shout out everybody that has been here so far. Dr. Leviathan has been dropping a lot of awesome suggestions, and I see some questions about how to, use chord mode, and also with like Tonverk and sending chords to other synths. I wish I could help with the Tonverk question. I just don't know anything about Tonverk yet, but as for sending chords, as far as sequencing chords using chord mode, the move is once you save go to your keyboard setup, and you flip over to, chord memory. You should have saved in your chord memory a set of chords. Make sure to check out my chord mode video to demonstrate like how to like set chords. It's actually pretty easy. So where's my keyboard at? Oh, I see what's going on here. So like that is not a chord. So, if that's your chord and you go to chord mode setup and you find chord memory, all you have to do is do function. Oops, I'm sorry, I messed up. Go to keyboard setup and you go to, chord spread, chord center, or chord root. And then you're just to do function yes. And it's going to say, hey, we're waiting for our notes. Where's your chord at? Drop in your chord. And then you hit yes, to confirm that that's the chord you want to save. And it's going to say, hey, where do you want to save it on your trigs? It wants to save it right there. I say yes. Now, if I want to sequence these chords into Digitone, then I want to scoot over to chord memory. So you have to have saved chords into your chord memory in order to do this part of it. You can't just like hang out on chord memory mode. It's not like the most smooth design ever. But so then now I can do things like, so record plus stop. Record plus stop. That puts me in step record mode. And I just hold down the keyboard. And this is kind of confusing because it's showing the same green light, but this green light actually represents the chord. And now it's a blue light telling us that we've recorded that onto a step. And actually, flip that around. The blue is telling us that that's a chord that we can hit and select from our 16 trigs. And now, as you see, we have 16 trigs laid down of chords. I hope that was helpful. And Stephen Chong, oh man, thank you so much. Dude, I really appreciate that. I really, really appreciate that. Cool, man. Thank you, Dr. Leviathan. That's a huge compliment. I know how the U.S. is looking abroad these days. It's not looking too great. So thank you for saying that I'm one of the good ones. Appreciate that. And I really have been meaning, so I totally missed this comment from, I want to say it's Villignon, about the J Dilla video and about musical taste, because I know you asked that question earlier and I think it was just too many things going on. What am I currently listening to? Dude, I listen to so much weird stuff. Let's see. Obviously my favorite group of all time is Autechre, and if you haven't heard them, I highly recommend them. But they're also kind of like a little bit challenging to listen to, and they're kind of the kind of artist where you just kind of want to dive into the whole thing, because the more you listen, the more it informs your listening, which I find to be the case for like listening to jazz players. Like if you listen to an earlier Miles Davis record and you move up from there, things connect back. You can see the progression. And Autechre is a very unique electronic duo for that reason, because they totally exist in that same framework. Whereas I think a lot of electronic music, and this is not an insult on it or anything, it kind of exists in like the space of like, I just want to drop a cool single and I want people to love it. And I hope, that it's good. And there's also, so another really good artist that I can recommend that from electronic music that I've been listening to is Floating Points. Floating Points is the bomb. I love his music. It's really interesting and really creative, and I can totally dance to it, run to it. It's, if you heard it at a club, you'd be like, I'm all for this journey right now. And another artist I've been listening to is this composer named Arvo Part, and he makes religious music with orchestras and a lot of choral work. And because I spend so much time thrashing out in this room making either hip-hop or like techno or just like industrial stuff, I'm just pounding my ears with this incredibly intense in-your-face music. I can switch to this guy Arvo Part, and his music is like laying in a bed of flowers. It's absolutely beautiful, and it requires slowing down. Those are some artists that I could say for sure. What's my favorite Autechre album? Oof. I'd say the one that I would recommend is Try Repete. It's from, I think, 95. Tripetea, or AE. Hell yeah. Yeah, I recommend Try Repete. It's a beautiful electronic album. It's all just like playing with loops and just building and building. And there's such an incredible like 90s quality to it. It's very much of its time, but it feels also very much outside of that era. And it's, oh, okay. Yeah. Why am I saying this? Yeah, you already know what's up, man. So then that was for anyone else who doesn't know. um, Yes, yeah, some beautiful sounds. I mean, so if I wasn't gonna if I wasn't gonna recommend Try Repete, then I would say check out EXAI. That's the one that I listened to first. It's really wild. Yeah, man, I love Try Repete. Harsh and beautiful is like a perfect way to describe it. Yeah. Man, I could talk about Autechre for hours, so please don't get me started. Oh, string sounds, yeah. So I got some really good ideas so far from the chat. Dub chords, dubstep, wub 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 rhythm type sounds. And I think both those would be really exciting to make a video about in the future. And if anyone has other types of sounds or genres that they would like to see explored on the Digitone 2, or a question about the Digitone 2, I am all ears, baby. Jega. Oh, okay, yeah. I've definitely heard some Jega songs before, and I know I have at least one or two albums saved, because he's like an IDM type artist. I think I even have that album saved. Gritty Rhythm Yoink. So thank you for the recommendation, because I feel like Jega was the type of artist, I heard it on a playlist and I was like, yo, who is that? And then I had to find it and then, saved it in my library and probably jammed it, but then like didn't absorb it. I have to like, do some focused listening to like find that. Man, Dr. Leviathan, bro, I could talk about snares all day. Like half of the ideas I have for like videos I want to make are just about making snares. And I'm like, I can't just make a video about snares. Like it's too specific, but yeah, snares are like kind of the most fun thing to play with. Yeah, cowbell. Man, well, FM is the totally the synth to make cowbell with, man. You can get some interesting tones there. Oh, bro, thank you so much, Villignon. Thank you, dog. I hope I'm pronouncing that the right way. Villignon. I'm like pronouncing it like it's a food or something. All right, I hear you, Dr. Leviathan. I want to do okay. I'm gonna because I did a snare layering video already in my mind. I was like, I can't just do that again. But to be honest, I wasn't totally happy with that video because there's so many ways to make snares and they're so different. So like maybe a dedicated snare video with like a couple, yeah, rim shots. Yes, yes, yeah. No, we absolutely could. Gonna have to, man. So I mean, so a video, even just like picking a simple subject like what we're talking about, like even if I just decide to make one video just about rim shot, it takes a long time to like get the exact example and to build up the way to explain it. So I know like it takes me a while to put out a video, but I just really appreciate that y'all are watching these videos at all. It means a lot to me. So I just want to say thank you. Um, like, man, all right, more snare enthusiasm. That makes me feel better because like that's the type of content that's close to my heart, is literally just nerding out on snares. I mean, probably if you zoomed out and you numerically, measured it up, I bet like 40%, 30% of my time is just on snares or kicks. I just love percussion. I get lost in the weeds, honestly. I'll spend an hour on a snare and be like, I was supposed to make a song and at least I have this cool snare, I guess. Yeah, claps. Man, lately I've been getting some really good claps. Once you play around with the randomized feature on the FM tone, I've been getting some crazy claps. All right, man. All right, y'all are making me feel good about these snare ideas. Dr. Leviathan coming in with the recipe. Yes, amp volume modulated by a ramp LFO. Bandpass filter is key for claps. Of course, white noise. A little bit of filter frequency movement with the envelope. All that together will get you a really good classic clap. One thing I've been doing lately to kind of add a little bit of like FM tone flavor to that idea is to mess around with the FM tone machine and pump up the randomization and really get some complex overtones happening. Excuse me. And then so basically instead of the white noise just by itself, I'm creating sort of a strange FM tone relational strange sound, and of course there's lots of feedback, so there's literally white noise mixed in there as well. But then playing with the harmonics and playing with the pitch of the FM tone operators and carriers so that those are dropping, and then so that gives you kind of like a kind of a smack. Yo, my boy Julio, thank you, dog. I love you, bro. Come. I've had a lot of success with these claps lately, because it can get really dirty and strange because it might not be a classic clap. It's a little different. Oh, it's snowing in NYC. Oh man, dude, I wish it was snowing here, dude. It gets hot. It still gets hot. It's a bummer. Um, yeah, my plans for the rest of the day, I got to take my dogs for their 30-45 minute walk, and they need to use the bathroom. And then I think I'm going to like have to like chill or something because I getting ready for this stream was like, trying to get ready to run a marathon or something, lots of nerves. So I bet as soon as I turn it off, I'm just going to like collapse. But just to finish my thought on the claps, playing around with the FM tone machine, playing around with the pitch on top of it. I've gotten some things that, is it a clap? Is it a hi-hat? Is it a snare? Somehow it sits in a world between those three. And also playing with the delay of the modulation for the envelopes, creating a situation where you get like an initial sound that's kind of thick and blocky, but then suddenly this ramp comes in after a couple milliseconds, bringing in all that colorful overtones of the modulation, and that kind of being the follow-up to the of like a snare, but it doesn't quite sound like a snare, doesn't quite sound like a clap. it'd be worth it to really just kind of try to find some good examples and then break them down and then show them to people. Dude, thank you, dog. So Meerkat is saying that he'd love to know more about making transitions between patterns and parts of a track, how to combine different parts for a full Digitone 2 track. That is, I think, one of those like walls that is really hard to climb and circumvent, because mentally, that's where it gets really challenging. Because, I mean, so in the past, when I've successfully been able to do that, I end up filling up an entire, page of patterns, and it'll be, something like pattern one is sitting in trig one or whatever, and then pattern two is just the same as pattern one, but now the hi-hat is a little more intricate. And then pattern three, now we're bringing in a melody, pattern four, and just kind of building like that. I think that's always a classic good move to make, but then that is clearly like an upward climb. So what do you do when you get to the point where now you're like in a full-blown song and then transition to a different part? And that's where I think it gets tricky, because then you have two options, or multiple options, but you can start subtracting and then replacing parts, so you can pull out that hi-hat, so now it's just kick and snare and maybe bass or something. And I like, whenever you do something like that, it's going to signal to the audience that like, oh, okay, things are shifting, or we're reaching we've kind of passed the zenith, and now we're kind of arching back towards some, an energy that's like a little bit lower, but it's still high. I find making a special sound just to connect that to maybe the next idea. So if you have like, that same track you've been working on, but now you have like part B, and part B is going to be a different bass line, a different melody, but it's all the same sounds. You can always do like a hard shift, just like an A to B, like bah, like just flicking and on and on, like a binary flip. Or like I was kind of starting to describe, which is where you bring in a sound that's just there to kind of color the sound, keep the energy up, and push it forward, so that then you can suddenly drop in and build to a new part. Maybe drop out the bass, let this, and I think the new sound idea that I'm describing, it kind of has to be something, the way that I, kind of have worked it out in my mind, is like something that demands attention and is upfront, coming at you, because then that takes all the pressure away from the other sounds to like continue to be, doing whatever, just meaning like keeping the song going. So if this upfront sound is coming, you can now kind of like quietly drop out some other things. Maybe the kick drum gets a little more reserved. Maybe you drop out the kick drum entirely, but then you can start bringing in one by one the elements from the next idea. So, and that's just one example of something that I personally have been trying to perfect, because my go-to is always to just binary flip things. Like now we're in part A and now we're in part B. There's no, maybe I'll make a fill. A fill is definitely your next best option. Make a special tom. I've been talking. I feel like I've just been talking. Let's see what folks are saying. Drooling. I feel you, bro. I'm drooling right now, drinking this drink. I hope that was a helpful and not too overly verbose explanation, Meerkat. I appreciate you being here. Julio, my bro, speaking directly to my heart. Thank you. Yeah, I think that would be a good idea. Oh, my boy, Ryan, my homie, I didn't know you were in here. Yo, we got a celebrity in our midst. We got Mr. Ryan Pivovar, my boy. Thank you. Yo, check out this man's record he just dropped. It's so dope. His Josh Coffee. Look it up. Any streaming service, Josh Coffee. He just dropped an EP. I don't know how you did it, bro, but the kick on track one was sending me to where I was like playing games, playing it, and I had to put the controller down because I was like, bro, this song is still going, and how did he fill up the sonic space so perfectly with that kick? All right, no, I don't want to glaze you too hard. That's embarrassing for both of us. No, thank you, dog. I love you, bro, and I can't wait to hear more music from you. If any folks have any other ideas or suggestions, for videos, I'm all ears. I'd love to hear it. I'm having a great time. I feel good. Sunday. It's my lazy Sunday. Yeah, I just want to shout out everybody that hung out. Dr. Leviathan, Meerkat, Villain Young, my man Julio, my man Ryan Pivovar. Make sure you check out Josh Coffee, his new EP. It's absolutely fantastic. MT Fame, thank you for hanging out. Stephen Chong, thank you for being here. Sriyak 7858, my bro. Euclidean Melody and Rhythm Session is coming, bro. It's coming. No, I can't pronounce that. Yo, just thank you guys all for being here. Trip well every day is the name of the person that I'm shouting out right now. NBEP Zuv, my man. Okay. Thank y'all for hanging out, y'all. It's been a blast. I'm going to do this again. We're going to do this again in the future, and I hope to see y'all there. And in the meantime, feel free to drop any ideas or suggestions for something like this in the future or any type of future video. I love y'all. Thanks for hanging out.